So I'm Kyle, and find me at Twitter, and also our project/company Twitter account. Yeah, so Gatsby is a blazing fast static site generator for React. It's gotten kind of popular, so a few stars, a few downloads. We actually recently, a couple weeks ago, passed 1,000 contributors, which is like,
super exciting.
Yeah, we'll clap for that. Which has been really fun to see, just going from me sitting in my bedroom, playing around with some ideas, to, hey, wow, lots of other people all around the world care about this. And
just adjust this up a little bit.
Oh, okay.
You're doing that wrong.
Oh, wow, it does get louder. Cool. Okay. So, so one prominent site you might have visited is React Docs, and they're built on Gatsby. So my background is started in college with Drupal, and then did that for a few years, and then switched to Backbone.js, which was kind of my foray into the world of JavaScript, and also kind of rich JavaScript web applications. And then in 2014, I started doing React. And React was like really kind of mind expanding and really fun. After doing PHP Drupal stuff for a while, Backbone for a while, I definitely like Backbone more than Drupal. Backbone felt very free, and I had a lot of kind of control. I could do really cool stuff. But React just felt right, and like all these things are really hard to do with other solutions just sort of tumbled out when I was working with React, and didn't want to use everything else. And so Gatsby came about 2015 because I was looking to build a website for my startup, and I didn't want to use anything else other than React. And so Gatsby was like, okay, how can I use React to build a website type thing? Because React is normally used for web apps, and so to build a website, I was like, okay, it's got to like load fast. Anyways, and so there's a bunch of little hackery to take each page and render it out to an HTML file, and then load that up, and then run React once it got started. And I built it, and it was super cool because it was really fast. It was really easy to build because it was React. And then also what was really fun is that whenever I needed to do anything dynamic, it was like, I was basically building like a small marketing site for the startup, but the few dynamic parts, it was trivial because it was React. I just dropped in a React component, and I was like hitting APIs and whatever, so it was cool. And it was fun too because all through my Backbone days, one of the big things we talked about was how to do universal JavaScript, how to server render your JavaScript app so it loads quickly, and then quickly hydrate it, and then go off and do stuff. And then with Gatsby, it was really straightforward to do this. So this all came about in 2015. So that was the initial release. And at the time, Gatsby was pretty similar to kind of the traditional static site generator mold. So Jekyll, Hugo, Hexo, like 5,000 others. It was very simple. You could have markdown pages. You could have JSON pages. You could drop a React component in. It would turn into a page. So it's very simple, very cool. But yeah, and so I was like, this is sweet. But the problem though is that I open sourced it, and then people were like, hey, why doesn't it do all these other things? And I was like, well, I don't know, because I didn't build it to do those things, probably. Users. Anyway, so, but I was like, okay, these are interesting requests. And after a while, I was kind of categorizing the request. A lot of people were like, hey, we want to build integrated with WordPress contentful Drupal. You want themes, you want code and data splitting, handle much larger sites, et cetera, et cetera. And I was like, okay, those are all cool, but hard. And what I gradually realized is that people had a much more expansive, kind of view of what Gatsby could be, not just like a little simple static site generator, but kind of a full-blown CMS replacement. And particularly, they wanted to use Gatsby as the presentation layer. And this got me excited because I'd done Drupal and I'd built these like complicated websites, with all sorts of like content types and interrelationship between models and whatever, and lots of clicking around the Drupal UI, if you've ever done that. Anyways, so it was good times, and I was like, oh, like sweet, like we can build similar types of stuff as that, but use React, which is a much more pleasant, kind of site building experience, and have much faster, site performance due to Gatsby kind of piling in a lot of kind of performance optimizations, and having everything done on React on the client side. So kind of how I started to conceptualize this is that the traditional monolithic CMS, it has this presentation layer and then kind of a content backend. And so you model your content, the content backend, and content editors and marketers, whoever, are adding content, editing content, and so forth. And then you have this presentation layer, which is like PHP templates of some sort or another generally, or some other language, whatever the CMS is written in, that you then kind of design your HTML, and you can like add in CSS and JavaScript and so forth. But they're like glued together. It's a monolith. But then you have this idea of like a decoupled CMS, where the CMS, like the content management part, is now headless. Like it just doesn't present anything, it doesn't present the site itself. And then you have this like presentation layer which pulls data somehow from the CMS. So now the CMS is generally exposing this content over an API, and then you build the site in however other fashion you'd like, which is great for all sorts of reasons, because you have a lot more flexibility, of course. You can also like do multimodal content, so use it in your mobile app or whatever. So it has a lot of flexibility when you decouple. So people were basically saying, we want to use Gatsby as this presentation layer and connect to CMSs or even other data sources. So I was like, okay, cool, but how do we do that? How do we bridge the gap? Like we have React components and we need to get data into the React components, but how do you kind of like thread the needle, take the content and, and get it all the way, the right content to the right place at the right time sort of thing. Because that's a pretty big part of programming is getting data to the right place. Anyways, it's silly, but that's all we do. So the solution I eventually came up with was called, it was just source plugins in GraphQL. So for each data source, you could create a plugin which would know how to get that data into Gatsby. And then with GraphQL, you could add a GraphQL query to your components so that you could specify on a per component basis, like, hey, we have all this data that we've made available, and for this particular component, this is the data that I need. And then Gatsby would just sort of magically, glue things together. And so now we have like all the advantages of a decoupled CMS, where it's very easy to kind of swap out, the different data sources, or even had multiple data sources. But we don't have this awkward, like, how do we get the data into our components, into our site? Because the build time GraphQL that's built into Gatsby would just sort of make a seamless glue between the decoupled layers. And so that's what went into V1 at Gatsby, which was released just over a year ago, July 2017. And yeah, so now you pick a CMS, you install the source plugin for that CMS, and then you can start writing GraphQL queries, and your React components are glued to the data from your CMS. So this kind of example of what a component would look like, where up top you have a React component like normal, and then down below you have a GraphQL query, and then you can see that it has like you're querying HTML front, and then like the title and the front matter. And then up top, it has like an H1, you put the title there, and then in the div, you put, the HTML. Yeah, so this actually slide's a little bit outdated. It's actually over 100 plus plugins now for different sources that we have. So now there's 422 total Gatsby plugins. This includes a number of other things other than just source plugins. But yeah, it's like, the community has been very active in kind of creating plugins to meet all these different needs. So oftentimes now you're like, hey, I want to build a site, I want to do this and this and this, and there's already plugins that are available to make that really straightforward. So strong community growth since V1. GitHub stars has been growing really fast. Like I mentioned earlier, a lot of new contributors. Like the last few months, it's been averaging 80 to 100 plus PRs per week, which is a lot of PRs. Even if it doesn't sound like it, you have to read every one and like click merge and everyone. It takes a while. So Twitter Love made this website with Gatsby.js. I'm totally in love with it. React static site generators are the future. Super excited about the next version of Gatsby.js, the first GraphQL-powered static site generator as far as I know. Really loving Gatsby.js tutorials and documentation. Seems like the perfect balance of depth and getting started quickly. My word, Gatsby.js is impressive. The sort of thing that's so well done you want to make up reasons to use it. However preposterous. And I include that tweet just for the word preposterous, which is a really nice word. And then, a Twitter comment, yeah. We actually get that comment a lot. Well, not specifically this comment, which is like a nice rendition of it, but just people are like, sort of like, the site's too fast. They're like, it's like, it almost feels wrong. It's like, sites shouldn't change that way. It's unnatural. Something like that. Yeah, a lot of people like to post screenshots of their Lighthouse scores. So we're, seeing on Twitter, people just telling us about it. There's tons of great websites being built in Gatsby. So this was a candidate for governor. I don't know. Did he win? Or I don't know, yeah. I hope he won. Figma. So Figma is a kind of a modern design tooling company. They actually relaunched their website on it too. I don't think we have it in the slides, but this is also a little microsite that they built. That's really cool. Some really interesting kind of navigation patterns that they have. EdgeDB. This is a cool e-commerce company. Code Sandbox. Tinder is a website, microsite. StitchFix.com. They relaunched last week, I think, on Gatsby. And then also, as you might have heard, Gatsby's now a company. So that's why we're here. Yeah. So, and who here is actually, I should ask, who here has like launched a website on Gatsby? Okay, like half the crowd. Is there anyone who hasn't tried Gatsby? Because I can just skip the whole getting started. Okay, there's a handful. Okay. Okay. No, that's cool. It's cool. You're among friends. We won't look down on you or something. Anyway, so getting started with Gatsby is really easy. There's like a CLI that you install. So you need Node, then you install CLI, and then you just type Gatsby new and the name of your site, and then presto changeo, you have a site. I'll show that off in a bit. Then there's also getting started tutorial, which we put a lot of time into making it, very friendly to people new to React or even new to programming. And so generally, you go through the tutorial if you're new to Gatsby, and you should be pretty well set up to start doing stuff. And some Twitter love about the tutorial, so beginner friendly. And skip that slide. Yeah, so as Jason mentioned earlier, we just released the first RC on Monday. Here's us hard at work at Jason's house here in Portland. So wanted to talk a bit about V2. So V2 has part new features and part kind of upstream updates. So as you might know, Gatsby is built on a lot of really impressive JavaScript open source tools. We rely on Webpack, we rely on Babel, and we rely on React, of course. And so Gatsby 2 has kind of updates from our upstreams. So we went from Webpack 1 to Webpack 4, React 15 to 16, and Babel 6 to 7, which have like tons of awesome new features, some of which I'll go into here. Also, we're really excited about guest.js, which is something that we collaborated on with Google and some open source people, which is basically guest.js is this really interesting idea where it integrates with your Google Analytics data. And so Google Analytics, of course, knows how people go through your site. If you land on one page, they know which other page you're going to go to. And because of that, we can use that analytic data to drive prefetching of pages that, through the analytic data that we know people are going to visit, which, speeds up your site pretty dramatically, even beyond, of course, the speed that Gatsby already gives you. Um, also, this is a fun optimization we did. So we sped up, so when you're editing Markdown, it's actually like pretty much real time to making a change to having that saved change show up in your. So let me play it again in case you missed it. This was actually Mike made this demo here. So.
Yeah, Mike.
Yeah, go Mike. Anywho, yeah. So I'm going to jump into some live coding, but before that, do you have any questions so far? Yeah. Uh huh. Yeah. Uh huh. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, so the question was what got me into web performance? And, well, basically nothing, because to me it's like a site should be fast. It's like if you're, a plumber, like your pipe shouldn't leak, and I don't know. Sure. Oh, sure. I mean, yeah, for a lot of websites, it kind of sort of doesn't matter, maybe. I mean, some people are like, hey, we got stuff on the page and it says things and whatever. But I mean, I've done a lot of like app stuff, where performance matters a ton. And, I don't know, I build websites and I like measuring things. So it's just sort of a natural like, hey, how fast is the site? And like, oh, I can make it faster. And how do you make it faster? And so to me, it's like just sort of a natural thing. But yeah, where some. Sorry, what? Yeah, so yeah, where for some people it just doesn't seem to matter too much. Yeah, sorry. What was your question?
So one of the things that stopped one of the organizations I work with from really deploying Gatsby beyond version 0.
Uh huh. Oh, version 0.
Well,
You guys are wow. Yeah.
I mean,
You're one of the few people that used it, so that's cool.
what's that?
You're one of the few people that used it. Yeah.
We were. That's
Yeah.
yeah, we're number 0.
Yeah. Yeah. You're number 0.
One of the things that stopped us from really using it there,
Uh huh.
something that you could address in 1 and 2,
Uh-huh.
is the glue layer between the headless CMS. So
Uh-huh.
using something, say, contentful.
Uh huh.
So when we have a site with multiple authors,
Right.
all digging away on their CMSs,
Sure. Yeah.
and making, I don't know, 10, 20 edits an hour,
Right.
things like that. Oftentimes you're going to want to do other operations like save and preview.
Right.
And that requires an entire site rebuild.
Right.
Because you can't do live Ajax. I mean, the
Right.
whole point is to not do live Ajax.
Right.
To get your data. So how do you address scale when you're talking about things like that?
Yeah. So question was, you have sites that data is changing all the time. How do you address that? I mean, because obviously Gatsby is a quote unquote static site generator. So if anything changes, you have to rebuild it. So I mean, there's a few ways to think about that. One is like automating the rebuilds. It makes it, automatic. So.
What essentially we ended up doing was basically just saying, when you hit this, it churns away for a while and locks everyone.
Oh, okay.
And basically no one else can hit that button while it's going.
Uh huh.
It'll queue other things.
Yeah.
But that's terrible UI, or sorry, UX.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, there's services that aren't so locky, if you will, that can handle that more gracefully, so it doesn't feel like such a broken experience. But generally speaking, though, so if you think about it, it's like how do things, you have CMS, and then things are live on the internet. For most people, it's a little bit hazy. What's the connection between those two? for good reason, because it's actually often quite complicated what's really happening when you like save something and then somehow or another it ends up on the website. But for most people, though, regardless of how complicated it can be, and in many organizations it's very complicated, the process, as long as it happens reasonably quickly, as far as they're concerned, I click save and then it's on the website, and yay, like, I'm changing the website. And so for us, it's all a matter of how do we make the build step, effectively disappear, so that, for most people, again, you click save and then they refresh their browser and they're like, yay, my change is there. Anyway, so that's largely actually why we're a company, is to solve that problem, because Gatsby is designed in such a way that we can, make the build step disappear. We're working on, a solution for that exact problem, because that's a big limitation to many people using Gatsby, is that, when you try to introduce Gatsby to non-technical people, they're like, hey, my experience is broken now because I click save, and then like, who knows when it's going to show up? It's going to show up at some point in the future, but it doesn't feel like instant like a CMS would. But again, if we can eliminate that build step and automate it, as far as they're concerned, they save and it's live, and then they're happy. But yeah, I mean that's a big bottleneck for many people using Gatsby right now, for sure. Cool. Other questions? And yeah, okay.
For you, why is Gatsby named Gatsby?
Why is Gatsby named Gatsby? It's a cool name. No, yeah, DJ Gatsby. Yeah, no, no, I don't know. I just I like books. I like literature, and so I went searching for cool people and cool characters in books, and Gatsby's my favorite, and nobody taken it, so there you go. Yeah. Other questions, Vinny? Yeah. Why did the screen froze? Oh, that's too bad. Well, that doesn't help my demos. Yeah, it's got like a long lag. Yeah. Well, was it doing this earlier when I was switching slides? Or is this? Yeah. Yeah, this is like 5-6 seconds behind. Huh. Well, maybe I won't show a demo then. I just got a new Mac and it's already super slow. It's depressing. Okay. Here, maybe I'll unplug. I'll turn it off and on again. Oh, wow. It's unplugged and it's still up there.
Wow.
Well,
I have another question about Gatsby.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
TypeScript is the new hotness. When is Gatsby getting TypeScript?
We have TypeScript.
Controversial thing I just said.
No. TypeScript's cool. We have TypeScript, so there's a plugin for TypeScript, so you install that and then you have TypeScript support.
So just drop it in.
Yeah. Often, pretty much anything you want to do, you can just yeah, it's really slow. Sorry, what? Oh, okay.
Can you use anything that Babel can input?
Sorry, what?
Can you use anything that is an input to Babel?
Yeah. You. Sorry, what?
Like anything that Babel can input.
Yeah. You have full control over your Babel RC. So you can add, yeah, you can add plugins to do all sorts of magic. Okay. Yeah, yeah, people built a lot of reason things. So, okay, well, let's see if I can show a little bit of a demo. So this site, so one cool thing that's in V2, this is still like, yeah, it's still like 4 seconds behind. Well, I'll show a little bit, I'll try. So, actually, wait a second. Oh, that's odd. Actually, I'll just skip that. So yeah, so a few other notable changes in V2. I spent a week or so working on improving build speed, and found a bunch of places to speed things up. So kind of highlight is we have this like a benchmark. Where'd it go? Yeah, so I built a benchmark site, and then in this isn't even V1. This was like just before the beta, before this PR landed. It built in. Oh, it's just gone now. Yeah, so it built in 1:36 for like 5,000 pages, and then after the PR, it built in 28 seconds. And then a Markdown site, same like 5,000 pages of Markdown, built in 9 minutes and 15 seconds, then 45 seconds. So it's a more startling improvement. But yeah, so that was really fun just to go through and find different places where we are kind of unintentionally making builds slower. And so Gatsby is much more sprightly for larger sites. Along with that, we followed that PR up with a kind of multi-core support for page, or for builds, for page building. Which, so if you have a machine with multiple cores, it can like, yeah, parallelize, you know, the builds across all your cores. And so anyway, so that can speed up your site considerably as well, the site builds. We added support for Babel plugin macros, which is cool if you're into that. So what's this? That's not what I was wanting to. Who's here heard of Reach Router? Has anyone heard of that? Oh, okay, wow, a lot of you, okay. Yeah, so Reach Router is a replacement for React Router. React Router is what we used in V1, and then we changed, so the same author of React Router built Reach Router because he wanted like first-class support for accessibility, and he also wanted first-class support for React Suspense, which some of you might have heard about as well. Anyway, so Reach Router, so we switched to Reach Router just to take advantage of that, because those are two things that we're very excited about as well. We switched to Mini CSS Extract plugin, which is, the long and the short of it is with Webpack, we now have support for like async CSS. So you can have different pages that have their own CSS, and those get lazy loaded as you kind of go around the site, which is quite nifty to keep things slim and tidy. That was complicated. Anywho, so any other V2 stuff I should talk about? Sorry, what? From V0? Oh. Oh, layouts. Yeah. I was like, haven't heard that term around for a while. So, no, yeah. Those were the good old days. So yeah, so in V1 we had this idea of like this global layout file, and Jason here actually wrote a nice article about this. Life after layouts. So anyway, so it turned out that layouts proved more complicated than they were worth. That's odd. And So oh, my computer is like fixing. Anyway, so we decided to remove them, and yeah. So anyway, so layouts were like the special component that kind of existed above the page hierarchy of components, and it proved really messy to work with, and so we removed them. They were just confusing. Though there is now a Gatsby plugin layout, which does restore the same v1 behavior if you need it for a few specific reasons. But generally speaking, you don't need it. Yeah. Other questions? Cool.
Did you want to build it in V3 that you were thinking about?
So the main thing we're thinking about V3 is just different ways to add support for faster, more scalable builds. So we're really focused on, kind of like I was talking about earlier, about making builds disappear. And to do that will require some changes to Gatsby, some core Gatsby APIs. And so anyways, we're working through figuring out exactly what those will be. But our goal with V3 is that basically unlimited size site. We'll support any size site. So even like a 1 million page site, we could build that in a few minutes, sort of thing. Sorry, what? Gatsby Enterprise. Yeah, something like that. Yeah. Cool. Yeah. We'll have more presentation about more V2 stuff, and we'll be around afterwards. But yeah, it's nice talking to you all.